Okay. Um, Welcome back. Good to see you all. We are picking it up where we left off back in the 70s or the beginning of the 1970s. I'm gonna just do a sort of quick reminder of our timeline here, so you can see where we are. You should be able to see that. So brief history of the modern state of Israel. I'll tell you just as an aside, because this is on my mind and maybe some others as well. I'm going to the county council meeting tonight where there is a motion for an immediate ceasefire on the table here in Allegheny County. It's going to be a long, unpleasant night. And all the speakers, and there are at least 300 people signed up to speak, which is a little ridiculous. Everybody's going to get a minute. But the challenge, of course, is that in a minute, even if you really try to coordinate your stories, how do you possibly capture the fact that Jews have a history that stretches much further back than 1882? That I've got on this timeline here. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. As I said, we're in the 1970s, which brings the end of the War of Attrition, which was a low-level war, primarily with Egypt. But of course, in 1973, we hit the Yom Kippur War, which until the last half year, of course, was Israel's most devastating war. Not only because, of course, the Israelis were taken by surprise, but also because it was very, there were heavy casualties. It was just a very painful moment for Israel. I think because of the fact that the attack on October 7th was almost to the day 50 years after the Yom Kippur War. It brought up, for those who remembered it in Israeli society, a lot of those feelings of that time. So we'll hear a few songs from that period. We're also going to encounter the peace treaty with Egypt, the accords that were signed between Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat in 1979. And I got at least one song that invokes that period. But also, I think what's most interesting about this period, the 1970s, is the music festivals, in particular the Eurovision Song Contest. And so we're going to hear some of Israel's greatest entries into Eurovision, at least from that period, and the winning songs from 1978 and 1979. As well as Israel's first entry into Eurovision, and also I have at least one song from one of the Hasidic song festivals. There were lots of song festivals in this period. Many of us I had these LPs, these vinyl records, in the 70s and 80s of the different song festivals that were really cool. I mean, it sort of points to the existence of those festivals. Sort of points to the role that pop music plays and continues to play in Israeli culture. But also what we see in this period is this ongoing fashioning of the sound of the state of Israel, which is the pop music sound of the state of Israel, which is also very interesting as well. So without further ado, we're gonna jump right into it. The first piece that I'm going to play you is actually a story of leaving the kibbutz. It's called Balada Le'ozev Kibbutz, the ballad of the one who's leaving the kibbutz, and it's a famous pop tune, which I think its popularity has sort of grown with the years, because it's got a sort of nostalgic feel to it. But it's about this period, the halcyon days of the kibbutz were the earlier years of Israel, and in fact the mandate period. And then at some point, Israeli society is developing to the point where people who are living on kibbutzim are thinking, yeah, is this all there is? Am I going to spend the rest of my life working in the cowshed, in the refet, which this song references multiple times, or might I do something else? So the song is rumored to be about two particular figures in Israeli culture that are very important. One of them is Yaakov Agmon, who is a well-known theater director, and also he was at some point the artistic director of Habima, the great theater in Tel Aviv. and he's the one who lives on kibbutz. He actually grew up on kibbutz Harel, and eventually he left in the early 60s. And his wife is Gila Amagor, who is one of the most famous Israeli actresses throughout the 20th century. And so it's maybe about them, although it doesn't mention their names, and it's not specific, but everybody seems to think it's about those people. The interesting thing about it is that the story, the way the story is told, it's about this guy who's like, I'm kind of done with the refet, I'm done with the cowshed, I'm going out into the world, and the kibbutznikim, they're all sitting around saying, he'll be back. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he says. He thinks he wants to live in Tel Aviv, and where he has to work in a restaurant for a few shekels an hour or whatever, and tips, and live in in a tiny apartment. But he'll be back. Who od yashuv is the repeated line. He will yet return. So here it goes. This is oh, you know what? Actually, hold on. I don't know that I did this right for sound. Just give me a second to share screen once again with share sound. Let's try this. Okay, share. All right. Balada לעוזב קיבוץ.
לפני 5 שנים עזב את הקיבוץ עם מזוודה אחת ובלריתו המתנפנפת. אמרו עליו, נראה איך יסתדר בחוץ. תראו שעוד יגזור על 4 אל הרפת. עבד בסטייקייה אחת נידחת, גר אצל הדודה וחי בהקפה. במשק יגנו משלחת, לא יכלו לשאת את החרפה.
They said, by the way, I just to interrupt here, she's telling a story about he leaves with with a suitcase, and he's going to live in Tel Aviv and work in a steakiya, steak place. And he's got, and they sent they're saying, no, he'll be back by 4 o'clock to work in the refet. But then they send a mishlachat, a delegation, to go tell him to come back. All right, sorry. By the way, the group that actually that's the voice of Josie Katz, again, who grew up in Greenfield. She's a member of this very brief group that existed briefly. They only recorded a few songs called Kef HaTikva HaTova. Her then husband Shmulik Kraus wrote the music to this song, and Yaakov wrote the lyrics.
פעם ביובל הגיע לביקור, היה חומק בשביל, ועם הוריו יושב בחדר. מסמיק מעט נבוך ולא מרבה דיבור, כן ולא, אל תדאגו, אצלי הכל בסדר. אומר שלא צריך אבל לוקח, כי לא אלכסנדר וכמה יונתן, הוא ממלמל תודה אתה יודע, רק בשביל הדרך כמובן. הוא עוד ישוב, הוא עוד ישוב, זה ג'וק קטן וזה עובר ולא חשוב. הוא עוד ישוב, הוא עוד ישוב, זה ג'וק קטן וזה עובר ולא חשוב.
From, I guess I didn't mention this, it's 1970.
השנים חולפות, קשה להאמין, הוא ללא בלורית, פה ושם מעט מקריאה. אומרים חושב בשמאל וחי לו בימין, בווילה שבנה, אי שם בהרצליה, שפעם ביובל הוא לביקור מגיע. אז זו אשתו השחקנית, יושבים עם ההורים על אבטיה, הקיבוץ מביט במכונית. הוא עוד ישוב, הוא עוד ישוב, זה ג'וק קטן וזה עובר ולא חשוב. הוא עוד ישוב, הוא עוד ישוב, זה ג'וק קטן וזה עובר ולא חשוב. איזה בן קיבוץ בלב הקר בעיר, נבוך עם התרמיל ובלוריתו המתנפנפת. וויסקי טוב מוזג, תשתה בחור צעיר ומחייך ספר, אז מה נשמע ברפת? בקבוצה בנחת, להזכיר כל פעם וגם אם לא נחוץ, ובשיחה שמסביב כל אחת, כשאני הייתי בקיבוץ,
So in the last verse, by the last chorus, they're saying not hu od yashuv, he will return, he will yet return, but rather hu lo yashuv, he's not coming back after having experienced living outside the kibbutz. Okay, so that was the ballad of leaving the kibbutz. So again, 1970, the world is changing. Israel is changing. The fabric of Israeli society is changing, and of course, you know, there have always been cities, right? But the fact that there are people who are thinking, maybe the kibbutz, which was presented perhaps as for many years as the Israeli ideal. You know, the sort of the mythic, the new Jew who's working the land and building this new Israeli culture. The fact that there's a pop song now about people leaving the kibbutz sort of speaks to the fact that the power of and the sort of the position that the kibbutz has held in Israeli thought is now sort of it doesn't carry the weight that it once had. So that was from 1970. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to hear a few songs from the Yom Kippur era. So the great thing about moving forward in time is that we have more video. So I have some of the things that we're gonna hear are actually videos of some classic tunes. The first one and this one, yes, question.
Before we get
Yep.
far down the road, why are they saying? Why do you think that the kibbutz has really faded from popularity? Why,
So Anne asks, why is the kibbutz fading from popularity? So that there are complicated societal forces in play, but remember that a kibbutz is not so easy to live in because you share everything, right? It has a pretty the work schedule is pretty demanding, especially in the most kibbutzim were agricultural at that time. You know, nowadays kibbutzim, you know, they sell software and medical products. You know, that's like the kinds of industries have changed. But at that time, you know, I mean, he talks about, you know, working in the cow shed because that's what you did. You would get up at 4 a.m. to get up and milk the cows. Right, the chickens. They're right. The lul, the chicken shed. And when I actually worked on a kibbutz as a volunteer in what year was that, 1999 or 2000, I worked in the bananas. You know, I worked at Kvutzat Kinneret, which is by the way where Naomi Shemer, who's our next artist, grew up. Naomi Shemer, in fact, actually, it's great. What a great lead into the next song. In addition to the fact that this is from the period of right after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Naomi Shemer grew up on. Okay, I don't know what the difference is between a kibbutz and a kvutza. I just know that some kibbutzim are called kvutzot. They basically mean the same thing. But Kinneret is one of the oldest kibbutzim. And it's actually right next to Degania, which is the oldest kibbutz. It's right at the southern tip of the southern end of the Kinneret, a little south of Tiberias. And I worked there for a couple of weeks, mostly harvesting bananas. And I also spent 2 days. Actually, one of the best stories that I can tell you, which I won't, we don't have time for right now, but were the 2 days that I spent working in the beehives. That was a lot of fun, but another time. But in any case, Naomi Shemer grew up on that kibbutz, and it so happened that when I was there in this, it was the fall of 1999. When I was there, it was the birthday of the kibbutz, the 80th birthday of the kibbutz. And Naomi Shemer actually came and gave a concert, and I heard her perform at Kibbutz Kinneret, playing the piano and accompanying herself and sing. It was most of the other volunteers were all like, they were from like Sweden and Norway. They had no idea what they were experiencing, but I was like, this is incredible. Anyway, so Naomi Shemer wrote this song, Lu Yehi, in the wake of the Yom Kippur War. Now remember, after 1967, Israel's military accomplishments were just, no one had expected that they would do what they did when they were attacked. Remember, from 1948 to 1967, Israel's very existence was sort of tenuous. So they were on this high for many years. The greatest jump in immigration from America, by the way, came after the Six-Day War in 1967. What happened in 1973 was devastating. The Yom Kippur War was devastating. And so Naomi Shemer wrote this song at a time when Israel was in really deep pain. By the way, if you haven't seen Golda, the biopic about Golda Meir, it's worth seeing. It's on, I saw it on one of the streaming services. I don't remember which one. It is available. It's worth seeing. It's not a great movie, but it is a good movie, and it captures that time, I think, quite well. But in any case, so what she's singing, so she wrote this song originally, and some of you may know the folklore behind this song in particular, is that it was actually written to the melody of the Beatles song "Let It Be." And as we've seen elsewhere in previous sessions, Israeli pop composers were often very good at borrowing other people's melodies, and the Beatles were very popular to borrow from. And then she was going to perform it, and apparently on the way to the studio to do this, this is actually a footage of this original performance from 1973. She actually wrote a new melody because her husband had said to her, this is such an important song. It really should be ours, fully ours, and not Lennon McCartney. So the melody that she's singing it to, you'll notice that the lyrics are a little different from the way that you might know them, because she hasn't really sort of finalized the way that it's going to track yet. But the song is basically a prayer. It's a prayer. Kol shenevakesh lo yehi, all that we request, let it be, basically, or may it happen. Okay, so here we go.
בדלת תן מילה טובה בפיו כל שנבקש לו יהי אם נפשך למות שואלת מפריחה ומאסיף כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי שופר וכל תופים כל שנבקש לו יהי לו תשמע בתוך כל אלה גם תפילה אחת מפי כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי בתוך שכונה קטנה מוצלת בית כל שנבקש, לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, לו יהי, כל שנבקש, לו יהי. ואם פתאום בתוך האופל על ראשנו עוד כוכב, וכל שנבקש, לו יהי. אז תן שלווה ותן גם כוח לכל אלה שנאהב, כל שנבקש, לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, לו יהי, כל שנבקש, לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, לו יהי, לו יהי, כל שנבקש, לו יהי.
לו יהי הטיוטה, כפי שנעמי.
Okay, so it's really such a powerful song. The last lines are "V'ten shavav v'ten gam koach lechol ele shenohav," give peace and give strength to all those whom we love. And it's just sorry, this happens to be every session, doesn't it? When I was in Israel in November, we sang this song multiple times in different places. It was in the air a month after the attack. I presume it still is. One of the places we sang it was in the Kikar HaChatufim, the hostage square in Tel Aviv. So also from this period is a song that you'll recognize, at least the words from the high holiday services. And those of us who've heard Musaf at Beth Shalom in recent years, Jonathan Winkle loves to use this melody. This is Unatana Tokef, which is really basically the central piece of the Yom Kippur the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur service, about who shall live and who shall die and so forth. And it was written by members of Kibbutz Beit Hashita, one of the kibbutzim, which is up north. It's not far from Afula, who lost 11 members of the kibbutz who were soldiers during the Yom Kippur War. This is not from that period. The performance is actually the Gevatron, which is a choral group from that originated in Kibbutz Geva, sort of well known for doing folk music, but it's such a beautiful tune. Again, speaks to what I find fascinating about this is that we all know, as people who belong to and appreciate synagogues, that we know that there's something very powerful in the ancient words of our Sidurim, right? You can write all the new prayers that you want, but it just doesn't carry the weight of what we know from our tradition and what we continue to use day to day, Shabbat to Shabbat, and year to year on high holidays. And so even for deeply secular Israelis, the words of Unatana Tokef, which are saturated with God language that they probably did not so much care for, even so in the context of loss of Yom Kippur, this really weighty sense of who shall live and who shall die, this piece, the words resonate and land in a way that is so appropriate. So again, this is the melody that you've heard Jonathan Winkle do at the high holiday services at Beth Shalom for Musaf. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's long, but we'll listen to some of it.
קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא ואיום, ובוא תנשא מלכותך, וייכון בחסד כיסאך, ותשב עליו באמת, ותשב עליו באמת.
It does have elements of traditional chazanut, traditional cantorial music, but it's also a pop tune.
ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו
All his Moses' language is about the book of life.
ובשופר גדול ייתקע,
Great shofar will be sounded.
וקול דממה דקה
You
יישמע,
will hear the still small voice.
ומלאכים יחפזון, וחילו רעדה יוחזון, ומלאכים יחפזון, וחילו רעדה יוחזון, ובשופר גדול ייתקע, וכל דממה דקה יישמע, ומלאכים יחפזו, וחילו ידה יוחזו, ומלאכים יחפזו, וחילו ידה יוחזו. ויאמרו הנה יום הדין, לפקוד על צבא מרום בדין, כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין, וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון, כבקרת רועה עדרו, מעביר צונו תחת שבטו. וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון, כבקרת רועה עדרו, מעביר צונו תחת שבטו.
This section is really much more of a departure from the more cantorial part, you might say, that came earlier. It's much more pop.
ותחתוך קצבה לכל בריאה, ותכתוב את שר דינם, ובשופר גדול ייתקע.
Yeah, rather than hear this part again, we're gonna cut it there. But again, it's hold on a second. It's clearly again an attempt to use the words of Jewish tradition, which pop music has always done. I think in more so in this period, we'll see a number of melodies that are a number of tunes that are actually drawing more heavily on Jewish sources, which I think you see over. You know, again, it's always sort of an undercurrent in Israeli pop, but the fact that they're able to do this in the early 70s again speaks to this sort of maturation of the Israeli pop scene, and of course Israeli secular Zionists coming to terms with their own Judaism as well, in some sense. So here's another liturgical melody, and this is one that you've surely all heard. This is the Adon Olam created by the composer Uzi Chitman from 1976. And again, you'll hear this sung occasionally today in American synagogues. It was certainly very popular when I was growing up. And it comes from one of the Hasidic Song Festivals. It's a Hasidic Song Festival of 1976. So again, the fact that it sort of crossed over into Israeli pop is actually very interesting and speaks to that earlier phenomenon. This is actually Uzi Chitman and Oded Ben-Hur singing.
בטרם כל יציר נברא, עת נעשה בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא. אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה. אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה, והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה. אדון עולם
Get a little more disco now.
בטרם כל שמו נקרא ואחרי כבלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא עובר והוא יהיה לתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי כבלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא והוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי כבלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא עובר בתפארה והוא היה והוא עובר בתפארה אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי כבלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי כבלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה והוא היה והוא הווה בתפארה.
All right. So I think probably people would enjoy Shul a lot more if we had all those flashing lights and, you know, disco scene. Yeah, question.
What's the question?
Yes.
Audience for this secular audience.
So
Prayerful song.
very interesting. Yes. And I think I don't really know. I didn't get that much information about this song. I mean, look, obviously it was well known enough that it filtered down to us. Now those Hasidic Song Festival LPs, and I think I might have even had this one. You know, they were widely, you could buy them in America pretty easily. They were very popular. You know, because the music was contemporary pop, and the performers weren't even necessarily they certainly weren't Hasidic, many of them, and they weren't necessarily even, you know, religious. They weren't religious, but they were singing, you know, liturgical music. So it obviously had a wide appeal for them to be able to put out those kinds of albums, and you know, it was pretty popular. Say it again? Oh, some of the groups that have performed these, and yeah, good to know. Yeah, they performed in Pittsburgh as well. Okay. So again, there was Uzi Chitman from 1976. So we're going to take a look at some Eurovision tunes now. So yes, question? Yes.
When they performed in Pittsburgh, where were
Répertoire, wir haben
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
were they performing like
I don't remember. We're going back 30,
Yeah,
40 years
it's a long
ago.
time ago.
But like, were they performing in a synagogue or?
No,
like
they weren't in a.
Like a public venue? Okay.
So okay, good to know that these kinds of acts came through Pittsburgh. Nowadays, we're not seeing a lot of Israeli performers come to Pittsburgh. But okay, so this is the first Eurovision entry from an Israeli group. Eurovision, in case anybody does not know, is a long-standing European, it's I believe a certain European broadcaster, I don't remember which one, but they've been hosting this competition for decades. And the way it works is that each country sends a song, you know, with a group to the competition. There are judges that vote on it. It's been happening every year. Some of you may know that it's actually currently in the news because there's some concern by the judges. I don't know where it landed recently, but within the past weeks, there was some concern that the Israeli entry this year was too political, and it's not supposed to be a political competition. So they were concerned about the song, you know, and given events in Israel right now, it's kind of hard for Israeli pop songs not to have a political angle. That's just sort of the reality of Israel and Israeli pop music. This group is Kaveret, which is definitely my favorite. It's the first real Israeli supergroup. It brought together some of the members of La'akat HaNachal, which we've spoken about extensively, one of the most prominent army performance group, and some of the best performers in Israel at the time. And they produced a couple of great albums. This is from I believe it's their first album, Sipurei Pugi. And the song is Natati Lachayai. So this was sent. Now this is actually an actual recording from Eurovision. The sound quality is not great. And also there were 7 members of the group, but the Eurovision rules only allowed 6 to be on stage. So the 7th one you'll see introduced in the beginning is Yoni Rechter, who is actually the keyboard player of the group, but they wouldn't let him be on stage with the other performers. So they introduced him as the conductor, which is ridiculous. So you'll see him walk in and he takes a seat as the conductor, but he's actually a member of the group. But really these folks, the members of this group, are among the most influential musicians in Israeli pop history. Danny Sanderson, Gidi Gov, Yoni Rechter, Yitzhak Klepter is the Eric Clapton of Israel. He's the best guitarist that Israel ever had. Anyway, wonderful performers. And this is a great song. The song is interesting because it's actually, without saying it explicitly, it's actually a critique of the state of Israel. And a critique in the sense of the song is called Natati Lachayai. I gave her my life. And basically it's about how I gave everything to Israel and she basically just kicked me and punched me in the stomach and insulted me. More or less is the message that I worked hard for this state and it just isn't what I hoped it would be. There's a line that kind of hints at the possibility of peace with the Arabs at the time. One says that the sky is finished, that there's not enough sky for all of us, when there is in fact enough air for 1 or 2 nations, is what it says. Okay, so yes, it's from 1976, I believe, or 75, I think. Yes. 74. Sorry. 74. So Pugi is so part of their act. Pugi is a character, and part of their act included not just songs but stories about Pugi. And they're these sort of, if you listen to the album, which I highly recommend, of course it's all in Hebrew, but there are these stories about Pugi, and that sort of are sandwiched in between the songs. So that's what. But it's just sort of it's a concept from their first album.
Das vorhin schon gesehen bei Spanien, jetzt auch in Griechenland. Israel ist zum 2. Mal dabei beim Eurovision Song Contest, war voriges Jahr, ich glaube, auf dem 2. Platz gelandet. Diesmal ist es die Pugi Group.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why they called themselves Pugi when they were performing there, but the name by which all Israelis know them is Kaveret, which basically means beehive. That's the name of the group.
Die für Israel singt. Auch hier werden Sie wieder ein stark folkloristisches Lied hören. Es heißt, ich gab ihr mein Leben. Und Pugi singen es hebräisch. Jonathan Rechter wird die Gruppe dirigieren, das Orchester dirigieren, das die Gruppe unterstützt mit ihren Instrumenten. Danny Sanderson hat die Musik geschrieben und er ist auch verantwortlich, gemeinsam mit Alon Olearczyk, für den Text. Pugi Group tritt jetzt eben in der Music Hall in Brighton auf die Bühne und singt für Israel.
Here's Yoni Rechter, again, the keyboard player. Be the conductor. Gotta love the outfits. Eurovision, the youth perform live.
שנה בן אדם, אין סיכוי, אין פיצוי, זה מה שקרה, נתתי לחיי, ירדתי על ברכיי, האמינו לי כולם, למדתי בזה סתם ונעלבתי.
The thing about this group also is that you'll see they're all singing 7 parts on the
לחיי, ירדתי על ברכיי, האמינו לי כולם, למדתי מה זה סתם ונעלמתי. שהנושא לכל ויכוח הוא מה בקודם הביצה או התפוח. אחד אומר שנגמרים לו השמיים כשיש מספיק אוויר למדינה או שניים. אולי בכל זאת נסתדר, אם תרצה אז נתגבר, אם על כל גישה זה מה שקרה כשנתתי לחיי, ירדתי על ברכיי.
Das also
Right. That's just such a great performance. So that was 1974 Eurovision. So their first win happened a few years later. And remember, Israel, we all know the Jews write great songs. Given Israel's strength in pop music, it was inevitable they would eventually win. And their first victory was in 1978 with this song Abani B, which when I was in Camp Ramah, New England in 1980 or 1981, we learned the popular folk dance for, and I didn't know what the words meant. It's actually it's a song about when we were kids. We had this secret language where they would stick the letter bet in between different syllables. So Abani B is Abani B is ani, I. Abani B, right? And then they say Obo Hebev, Ohev Otach. I love you is what they're saying. Abani B Obo Hebev Obo Tabach is the line. And so it's like this secret language that they would use to talk to each other. Exactly, it's Hebrew Pig Latin. It's exactly what it is. Yeah. Oh, written by Nurit Hirsch, by the way. Nurit Hirsch, who you see here at the music. She is one of the best pop composers as well. A lot of the songs that you know, like Oseh Shalom B'Romav and Bashana Haba, a couple others were composed by her. There's actually an interesting story about Nurit Hirsch that she somebody used Oseh Shalom in a movie once without crediting her because they didn't know that she'd written it. It's, they said like traditional or folk tune or whatever, and she sued them and made a lot of money. So, okay, here we go. Yeah, exactly.
Even more. Nurit Hirsch, this is, conducting the orchestra for the Israel entry, song number 18. The song is called Abah Nibi, it's called. And here come Alpha Beta. Simple peasant smocks, cream trousers, the girls all in white. And this is a good vivacious song for Israel. Might do very well.
1978. The name of the group was Alpha Beta. Yishai Cohen is the sorry about that.
אהבנו בסוד הסודות, אל מי היינו נחמדים, רק לדודים ולדודות, והבנות המסכנות סבלו, המתוקות רק מכות קיבלו, ואת מה שהרגשנו באמת, לחשו רק מספר אמת. הבני בי אבו אבב, הבני בי אבו אבב, אבו דבה, הבני
How could this not win? No, it did win. How can it not? Okay, so they obviously they won, and what happens with Eurovision, of course, is that if you win, then the country that wins hosts it the next year. So Israel hosted it the following year in Jerusalem, and the song that they so 1979, this is the song that they presented. By the way, so what happens? I don't know if this still happens today, but what was happening in this period is that there was a competition. There's an internal competition within the country to actually decide which song is sent, and so there are a bunch of other songs that are also Eurovision, like pre-Eurovision songs that are also part of, every year they would produce a crop of new songs. So this song you probably know as well. This is Hallelujah, and it's 1979 in Jerusalem. It so happens, of course, that they win again. And they won't host it the subsequent year because of logistical problems. It so happens, however, that the week that they're performing this is the same week that Israel and Egypt signed that peace treaty in 1979. So it's a big week in 1979 for the state of Israel. Yeah.
Sorry, what was happening in 1980 that they couldn't host?
Oh, so I've heard two different stories. One is that the Israel Broadcasting Authority, that the logistics around it were too high, it was too expensive, and they lost a lot of money on it. That's one story I've heard. The other story I've heard is that I think the date for the final coincided with Shavuot. But I actually don't know. I have to do a little bit more study to find out which one of those is true. They might both be true. But in any case, okay. So here's Hallelujah. Singing is Gali Atari. With the group Chalav Udvash. This is in Jerusalem at Binyanei One of the things that enables this song to succeed, of course, is that everybody in the world knows the word Hallelujah. They all know
הללויה עם השיר, הללויה על יום שמאיר, הללויה על מה שהיה היה ומה שעוד לא היה. שיר כולם והענבלים הגדולים יהדהדו בהמון צלילים ואיתנו הם יאמרו הללויה Hallelujah.
Okay, we're running low on time, and I got to get to at least a couple more songs. Very briefly, here's David Broza singing Yiyeh Tov from in the wake of the peace agreement with Egypt in 1979 about how there will be Yiyeh Tov, there will be a better future. Something that is of note is this is written by the lyrics are written by Yonatan Geffen, who is probably best known for writing poetry, children's poetry, but he also wrote lyrics to songs. I think there's a story where I think David Broza says, Yonatan Geffen said he would get back to me about writing the next song or whatever about the future peace that we're all going to appreciate after in the wake of this agreement. But he said he never called him back or something like that. Anyway, so
קראנו לזה אז שיר שלום מספר 579 קו נטוי א'. אני מביט מהחלון וזה עושה לי די עצוב. האביב חלף עבר לו, מי יודע אם ישוב. הליצן היה למלך, הנביא נהיה ליצן, ושכחתי את הדרך, אבל אני עוד כאן, ויהיה טוב, יהיה טוב, כן, לפעמים אני נשבר. אז הלילה, איתך אני נשאר.
I'd love to play more of this, but I just gotta get to the Mizrahi folks before we conclude. So I'm going to share with you a song from one of the first successful Mizrahi albums. Now remember that among Mizrahi Jews, there was a long journey to the place of acceptance culturally within Israeli society. Israeli society was long dominated by Ashkenazi Jews, and so that meant that they were in control of like the kind of music that we played on the radio. So a lot of the early Mizrahi tunes were not played on the radio at all. They were actually distributed. They became known for being distributed on cassettes. And you would hear, anytime you went through the Tel Aviv bus station, you'd hear people selling these cassettes and playing the music very loud. This group is called Lehakat Tzlilei Ha'ud, the sound of the oud group. Oud is of course an Arab instrument, and I just love this piece. It's actually called Chanala Hitbalbala, which is a sort of it's kind of a slightly off-color poem written by Natan Alterman in 1933 for some kind of Purim celebration. It's actually the story behind this. I don't have time to explain the whole story, but it is a remarkable story because it's written by an Ashkenazi. The words are written by an Ashkenazi poet. About this couple that they're disagreeing about basically whether or not to have sex before they get married, and suddenly they have a baby boy, and the melody is also an Ashkenazi tune, but it is Sephardified or whatever Mizrachified to produce this. Here we go. This is great. Joe Amar and Ari Saman and previous like the first big style comes out of these Yemenite parties that were happening in Terem HaTemanim, the the Yemenite quarter in Tel Aviv, and many of these artists were part of that.
החתן רוצה להיות לאבא בן מחנה לדרש חנה לימרה לו בן זה לגמרי לא יפה לו בן ולא ירצה אם תרצה בן או בת לך עשה לך לבד כי חופש בעולה ופרט יום שישי פרצה
I got to cut it there because we're almost out of time, and I would play one more tune. But what you hear is this style, the style of singing that comes from the Mizrahi world, particularly the Yemenite musicians, the instrumentation, the rhythms, everything about it is a, again, but still very much a fusion of Ashkenazi music and lyrics with that Yemenite style. The next piece is similar. In that it's another group called Tzlilei HaKerem, which is again the sounds of the Yemenite quarter in Tel Aviv. That's literally what the title of the group is. The famous Mizrahi performer Daklon is the featured singer here. Again, you'll hear he has this very nasal style, which is typical of the Eastern Mizrahi Jews. And in fact, this song is the lyrics are from a 17th century collection of poems by a famous Yemenite rabbi. Called Ayelet Chen. Although you'll, if you know what to listen for, you can also tell that he's singing it in the Yemenite with the Yemenite pronunciation of Hebrew, not the standard Israeli pronunciation. Anyway, this is a great song. We got to wrap it up, but you hear the vocal style, the silsulim, if you go to any Yemenite synagogue, you'll hear that kind of music. It's drawing very heavily on the Yemenite musical traditions. And again, it's infusing not only, I mean, it's obviously very popular in the people that know that from their own musical tradition, but also it's seeping out into the wider Israeli population as well and their appreciation of pop music. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Our next session is Mindy just left, so it's on 2nd of April 2nd. Okay, and we're going to cover. It's our last session, so I'll do whatever I can to make up for the last. That's over 40 years to cover, but we'll play a few good tunes, and hopefully we'll cover some Israeli some parts of Israeli history as well. Thank you so much for joining me once again. A pleasure to see you all online, and those of you who are here with me. And I hope you're all appreciating the good music, and I'll see you soon. Have a good day. Take it easy.
I'll tell you something funny about the Civic Folk Festival. When they were performing for the day schools, they would only let them perform if no women had solos.
Oh, really? They would only let them perform.